Phil Hickerson is almost 80 years old now, but where is he these days? If you're a wrestling fan, you've probably wondered that at least once, and honestly, you should. For a guy who made such a mark in the territories, the fact that he never got much national recognition makes his disappearance even more mysterious. So today, let's dig in and find out what really happened to Phil Hickerson and where he went after wrestling. Let's rewind because his story isn't just about championships or rivalries. It's about the wild world that existed behind the curtain. The long road trips, the relentless physical grind, and the outrageous behavior that defined wrestling's underground carny culture in the 1970s and 1980s. Back then, the wrestling locker room was nothing like the polished, corporate setups fans see today. It was rough, chaotic, and full of wild personalities, pranksters, heavy drinkers, and brawlers who lived as hard as they wrestled. Everyone had a story, and every night felt unpredictable. Life on the road was relentless. Wrestlers worked hundreds of nights a year, living out of suitcases, eating fast food, and catching whatever sleep they could in cheap hotel rooms. That constant motion created its own strange world, one built on inside jokes, strange rituals, and a pecking order that newcomers quickly had to learn. One of the most infamous parts of that culture was the rib, wrestling's term for a prank played by one wrestler on another. Some ribs were lighthearted, like hiding someone's ring gear or switching their boots before a match. But others crossed the line completely. What started as humor could easily turn cruel, and the difference between a joke and bullying often vanished. In that world, you either laughed it off or were laughed out of the locker room. It was seen as a test of toughness, proof that you belonged in wrestling's brotherhood, no matter how harsh things got. Hickerson became the center of one of wrestling's most talked about rib stories, an incident that would later become a grim example of how out of control that backstage culture could get. During his time teaming with Dennis Condrey, a wrestler known for his toughness and unpredictable nature, something happened that went far beyond the usual locker room chaos. According to stories that circulated for years among wrestlers and fans, Condrey played an extremely graphic and non-consensual prank on Hickerson, something that completely crossed every boundary of decency and respect. It wasn't just another rib. It was shocking, humiliating, and deeply personal, an incident that left a lasting shadow over Hickerson's time in the business. The details, often whispered but rarely spoken publicly, stand as a disturbing reminder of how out of control that old wrestling world could be. Back then, it was all brushed off as part of the boys' club culture that ruled the territories. There were no HR departments, no formal complaints, and no real sense of accountability. Yet despite all that, Hickerson never let it end his career. He kept showing up, night after night, putting on great matches, traveling the territory, and keeping his reputation as one of Memphis wrestling's toughest men intact. At his peak, Phil Hickerson was a major name in the Memphis territory, a tough, loud-mouthed heel who could send crowds into a frenzy with just a few words or one well-timed cheap shot. He was a multi-time champion and a fixture of Tennessee wrestling, squaring off against some of the biggest stars of that era. For fans in the South, Hickerson wasn't just another wrestler. He was part of the heartbeat of the territory. But his prime came right before the entire wrestling world changed forever. When Vince McMahon began taking the WWF national in the mid-1980s, everything that had defined the business for decades was flipped upside down. The old regional system, the lifeblood of wrestlers like Hickerson, started to crumble as the WWF and later WCW expanded onto national television. For wrestlers who had built their careers town to town, the shift was devastating. Hickerson was one of many who got caught in that wave. He had the charisma, the in-ring skill, and the experience, but he came up in the wrong era. His success was tied to a time when wrestling was local, when being a Memphis star meant you were a hero in Tennessee, but practically unknown a few states over. Once wrestling went national, many of those regional legends, including Hickerson, were left behind. It wasn't about talent or passion. It was simply about timing. Hickerson had built a career the old-fashioned way, by traveling the roads, performing in every kind of arena imaginable, and giving everything he had to the business. Of course, All those years on the road didn't come without a cost. Wrestling back then wasn't just tough, it was downright punishing. The matches were rough, the schedule was non-stop, and there was barely any time to rest or recover. Phil Hickerson spent over 15 years pushing his body to the limit, night after night. Every slam, every fall, every long drive to the next town chipped away at him. And like so many from that old school generation, the pain didn't stop when he retired. It just followed him into everyday life. The territory circuit wasn't built for comfort or longevity, and hardly anyone made it through without paying a heavy price. By 1991, Hickerson decided it was time to step away from the business. He had given wrestling his best years and had become part of its history. Especially Phil Hickerson just found a new stage, this time behind a microphone. For nearly 2 decades, he worked as a radio co-host on WYN 106.9 in Jackson, Tennessee. His big personality and Southern charm instantly clicked with listeners, and before long, he became a local favorite. Just like in the ring, Hickerson brought energy, humor, and that down-to-earth honesty people loved about him. Many fans tuned in daily without even realizing the voice they were hearing once belonged to a wrestling veteran. Radio gave him a new kind of spotlight, one where he didn't need to throw punches to win people over, just his words and wit. After 18 years, he stepped away from the airwaves too, closing another chapter in a life full of twists and grit. These days, when people talk about Phil Hickerson, they don't just remember the wrestler, they remember the survivor. A man who went through the toughest era of wrestling, took every hit life threw at him, and still managed to keep standing tall. Now let's have a look at how it all began. Hickerson began his career in 1974 with the Tennessee-based NWA Mid-America promotion, one of the most respected wrestling territories in the country at the time. This was the same territory where legends like Jerry Lawler, Jackie Fargo, and Tojo Yamamoto made their names. The fans were loud, loyal, and fully invested. The schedule was unforgiving, and the rivalries felt as real as anything in everyday life. Phil Hickerson didn't just fit in, he thrived. That same year, he teamed up with veteran Al Green to form a tag team called the Sherman Tanks, a name that couldn't have been more fitting. They were tough, relentless, and didn't hesitate to bulldoze anyone who dared to step in their path. From the moment they joined forces, Hickerson and Green clicked. Their chemistry was instant, their style brutal, and their teamwork flawless. Then came 1975, a turning point. Hickerson joined forces with another rising star, Dennis Condrey, and together they became the Bicentennial Kings. The name was inspired by the upcoming U.S. bicentennial, but make no mistake, these two weren't waving flags or spreading patriotism. They were brash, cocky, and ruthless, a perfect fit for the villainous side of wrestling. The Bicentennial Kings weren't out to be liked. They were out to dominate. That same year, they joined forces with their old ally, Al Green, to capture the NWA World Six-Man Tag Team Championship, proving they could hold their own not just as a team, but as part of a larger, powerful group. The Bicentennial Kings quickly became one of the defining teams of the Memphis territory, despised by the fans, yet deeply respected by everyone inside the business. Between 1976 and 1978, Phil Hickerson and Dennis Condrey went on an incredible run that few tag teams could match. They dominated the scene, capturing the NWA Southern Tag Team Championship, Mid-America version, later renamed the AWA Southern Tag Team Championship, an astounding 9 times. Their names were plastered on posters all across Tennessee. Their promos aired on local TV every week, and their matches packed arenas from Nashville to Memphis. But they didn't stop there. The Bicentennial Kings also won the NWA United States Tag Team Championship Mid-America version 5 times, and added 2 more reigns as NWA Mid-America Tag Team Champions. Every time someone thought they were finally done, they'd bounce right back, meaner, smarter, and hungrier than before. Fans booed them with everything they had, but even the loudest critics couldn't deny how talented they were. Hickerson, in particular, stood out as one of the best villains in the region. He had the perfect mix of grit and charisma, the kind of guy who could rile up a crowd with a single smirk or a few sharp words. By the late 70s, Hickerson had become a true Southern heel icon. He was loud, fiery, and fearless, a man who embodied everything fans loved to hate about wrestling in that era. In 1977, Hickerson decided to take his talents to a new stage, joining Jerry Lawler's Continental Wrestling Association, CWA, in Memphis, Tennessee. The move was a perfect fit for Phil Hickerson. The CWA was exploding in popularity across the South, known for its electric crowds, fiery promos, and storylines that felt almost real. Memphis wrestling wasn't polished or corporate. It was raw, loud, and emotional, and Hickerson fit right into that world. He thrived there, becoming one of the territory's most dependable and entertaining performers. Whether he was wrestling solo or teaming up with others, Hickerson always delivered. By 1985, he hit one of the biggest milestones of his career, winning the AWA International Heavyweight Championship not once, but 3 times. Each reign showed that he wasn't just a tag team guy anymore. He was a legitimate single star who could carry a territory on his own. Then in 1988, Hickerson reached another career peak when he captured the CWA Heavyweight Championship, the top prize in Memphis wrestling. For a man who had spent years grinding through the regional circuits, his career global, he toured Japan with All Japan Pro Wrestling, one of the toughest and most respected promotions in the world. There, he teamed up with powerhouse Jerry Blackwell in the world's strongest tag determination league, a tournament filled with some of the hardest hitters in the business. Japan was a different world, stiffer matches, louder strikes, and fans who treated wrestling like a serious sport. But Hickerson adapted quickly. His rugged style and ring smarts made him a natural fit for the Japanese strong style. And before long, he had earned the respect of both the locker room and the fans. By 1989, Hickerson's career entered another unique phase. He began working for the United States Wrestling Association, a merger between the CWA and World Class Championship Wrestling. In the USWA, Phil Hickerson decided to completely reinvent himself, and what he came up with was one of the most unexpected characters of his career. He transformed into a faux Japanese villain named P.Y. Chu-Hai, a gimmick that mixed humor, creativity, and a touch of homage. The name itself was clever, a nod to Tojo Yamamoto's old ring name, P.Y. Chung, combined with Chu-Hai, a popular Japanese alcoholic drink. Managed by the legendary Tojo Yamamoto, Hickerson fully leaned into the role. Together, the two created one of the most entertaining heel acts in the entire promotion. Their over-the-top antics and larger-than-life personalities made them instant crowd magnets. People loved to hate them. In July 1989, Hickerson's new persona paid off in a big way when he defeated Eric Embry to capture the WCWA Texas Heavyweight Championship. It was another major milestone in his already decorated career, showing that even years into the business, he could still reinvent himself and stay relevant. Although he dropped the title back to Embry just a month later, the run proved something important. Phil Hickerson wasn't just a one-note wrestler. He could adapt, evolve, and bring any character to life, no matter how unusual it seemed on paper. After more than 15 years of battling it out in rings across America and Japan, Hickerson began winding down his in-ring career. By 1991, he officially retired from professional wrestling, closing the book on a career filled with championships, rivalries, and unforgettable memories. But Hickerson wasn't ready to fade into the background. Even before fully retiring, from 1981 to 1987, he managed Tremors nightclub in Jackson, Tennessee, a popular local spot that became a gathering place for fans and friends. After stepping away from wrestling, he shifted gears entirely, becoming a radio DJ for WYN 106.9 FM in Jackson. For the next 18 years, he entertained listeners, just like he once entertained wrestling fans. His quick wit, booming voice, and larger-than-life personality made him a local favorite all over again. In 1995, Phil Hickerson's legacy was officially honored when he was inducted into the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame, a fitting tribute to a man who helped define an entire era of Southern wrestling. And that's a wrap for today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an update. See you next time. Bye.